Imagine a concrete box 9 meters long, 6 meters wide, with walls thicker than nuclear bunker specifications. The silence so complete that guards reported going deaf after extended shifts. The isolation so extreme that fluorescent lights were programmed to randomly disrupt sleep cycles, breaking the human spirit through engineered madness. This is Unit 20 at Altiplano Federal Prison, the most expensive prison cell per square meter ever built in the Americas. $2.3 million of surveillance technology, soundproofing, and psychological warfare, all designed to contain one man who hadn't even been captured yet. But here's what the Mexican government discovered after spending $47 million on their perfect cage. Absolute security requires absolute dehumanization, and the monster they created wasn't the one locked inside. When Joaquin El Chapo Guzman first stepped into this concrete coffin, his words to the warden were captured on surveillance equipment designed to record every breath, every whisper. How thick are the walls? 1.2 meters of reinforced concrete, stronger than most nuclear facilities. Yet beneath those impenetrable walls, 3,250 cubic meters of earth would be secretly excavated over 18 months using power tools that cost less than $500 total. The mathematical impossibility: more dirt was moved per day than physically possible by the supposed workforce. Today, we open the classified files on Mexico's most catastrophic security failure. We'll examine the architectural blueprints, the corruption algorithms, and the $2 million proof that no cage is stronger than the moral character of those who hold the keys. This is the story of how the pursuit of perfect control created perfect corruption, and why Unit 20 now sits empty, a monument to the fundamental truth that human ingenuity cannot be contained by human engineering. If you're ready to descend into the concrete tomb that broke a nation's faith in its own institutions, let's begin. The year is 1993. And somewhere in the volcanic highlands of central Mexico, government surveyors are planting red flags in barren soil. They work in silence, these men, measuring out a plot of land that will soon become the most expensive prison cell per square meter in the history of the Americas. $2.3 million for 54 square meters of concrete and steel. More expensive than the Pentagon, more secure than nuclear bunkers. All of it designed for one man who hasn't even been captured yet. This is the story of how Mexico built the perfect cage, and how that perfection became its fatal flaw. The helicopter descends through thin air at 2,600 meters above sea level, rotors cutting through wind that never stops howling across this plateau of volcanic ash and broken dreams. Below stretches the valley of Almoloya de Juarez, a geographic anomaly that seems designed by nature herself for the business of human containment. The pilot banks left, and through the scratched plexiglass window, the landscape reveals its secrets. 40 meters down, bedrock. Natural sound dampening from the volcanic soil. 127 kilometers from Mexico City, close enough for oversight, far enough for forgetting. The wind carries no sound here. Screams dissolve before they travel 50 meters. This barren plateau houses 43% of Mexico's most dangerous criminals within a 15 square kilometer radius, the highest concentration of maximum security facilities in Latin America. La Palma, Molino de Flores, Centro de Readaptación Social. Names that sound almost pastoral, hiding the reality of 27,000 inmates locked behind walls that rise like concrete mountains from the valley floor. But in 1993, one specific plot, 2.3 hectares of windswept nothing, was marked with red flags by government surveyors for a project so classified that even the local mayor wasn't informed. The flags snapped in the endless wind like prayer flags in a godless place, marking ground that would soon hold Mexico's most ambitious prison, a facility designed not just to contain evil, but to mathematically prove that evil could be contained. Fernando Romero's corner office in Mexico City overlooks the Paseo de la Reforma, but on this morning in late 1993, he's not admiring the view. Spread across his drafting table are documents that make his hands shake, not with fear, but with the terrible excitement of impossible ambition. The commission from Grupo ICA is unlike anything in his 20-year career designing government buildings. Not a hospital, or a school, or even an ordinary prison. This is something else entirely. A facility designed for one specific future prisoner. A man who doesn't yet know he's been sentenced to a cell that exists only in blueprints. The psychological profile folder weighs 3 kilograms. Inside, behavioral analysis of Joaquin Guzman Loera, known as El Chapo, 5 feet 6 inches of pure criminal genius, claustrophobic, history of tunnel escapes, network of corrupted officials stretching from Sinaloa to Mexico City like arteries, carrying money instead of blood. Romero's task: design against human nature itself. The budget authorization sits beside the profiles, signed by ministers whose names will never appear in public records. $47.3 million for a 60,000 square meter facility, but buried in line item 57, $2.3 million allocated for a single 54 square meter cell. More expensive per square meter than the Pentagon, more secure than NORAD. Romero studies the requirements document, each specification more extreme than the last. Walls 1.2 meters thick, soundproofing rated to contain explosions up to 50 decibels, surveillance systems calibrated to detect movement within 2 centimeters, lighting designed to disrupt circadian rhythms. And then the feature that makes 3 government officials resign rather than approve it: the sensory nullification protocol. 23 hours daily of complete isolation. No human contact beyond the delivery of pre-measured calories through a slot too small for fingers to touch. A cell designed not just to contain the body, but to systematically disassemble the mind. Romero sets down his pencil and stares at the valley photographs clipped to his drawing board. In 6 months, dynamite will shatter the silence of Almoloya de Juarez. In 3 years, El Chapo will wake up in a concrete box engineered to be the last room he ever sees. But Romero doesn't know, cannot know, that he's designing more than a prison cell. He's creating a monument to the fundamental impossibility of perfect security, a $2 million proof that human ingenuity cannot be contained by human engineering. January 15, 1994, 6:47 in the morning. The first dynamite blast echoes across the valley like the heartbeat of something vast and terrible being born. 47 government officials stand in a half-circle around the blast site, their breath forming small clouds in the sub-zero air. Zero media present. This is a birth that must happen in darkness. The construction challenges reveal themselves immediately, like a preview of the institutional challenges to come. 12,000 tons of specialized concrete must be imported from Germany because Mexican concrete cannot meet the specifications. Fiber optic cables must be installed in temperatures that freeze lubricants and snap steel. 847 construction workers labor under military supervision, their movements tracked, their conversations monitored, their families photographed as insurance against loose tongues. The worker mortality rate becomes the first statistical prophecy of what this place will do to human beings. 7 deaths in 18 months, officially attributed to altitude sickness and equipment malfunction. Unofficially, 3 times higher than comparable projects. The dead are buried quickly, quietly, their families compensated with government checks that come with non-disclosure agreements. By month 6, the surviving workers begin reporting phenomena that don't appear in engineering manuals. Strange acoustic anomalies in the unfinished cell blocks. Sounds with no identifiable source. Voices echoing from walls that haven't been completed. The project psychologist attributes it to altitude-induced auditory hallucinations, but work crews start requesting transfers to other government projects. The concrete truck drivers develop a superstition about delivery schedules. They refuse to work after sunset, claiming the empty cell blocks swallow sound in ways that violate physics. Engineers dismiss these concerns, but the delivery delays add 6 weeks to construction time and $800,000 to the budget. As winter deepens, something darker emerges in the accident reports. Workers begin injuring themselves in ways that suggest deliberate self-harm. Fingers caught in machinery, falls from scaffolding that experienced climbers shouldn't experience. The medical tent treats more psychological casualties than physical ones. The construction site becomes a laboratory for understanding what happens when human beings build monuments to human containment. Every day spent creating this perfect cage is a day spent proving that perfection itself is a form of violence. Violence against the workers who build it. Violence against the prisoner who will occupy it. Violence against the very idea that human dignity can be engineered away. December 1995. The completion of Solitary Unit 20 represents the pinnacle of carceral engineering, a concrete poem written in the language of absolute containment. The walls measure 1.2 meters thick, stronger than most nuclear bunker specifications. Steel mesh reinforcement every 15 centimeters creates a matrix so dense that seismic equipment cannot distinguish the structure from natural bedrock. The soundproofing specifications read like the requirements for a recording studio designed by sadists. Rated to contain explosions up to 50 decibels, the acoustic dampening swallows human voices so completely that guards report feeling deaf after extended shifts. The ventilation system operates on 17-minute cycles, engineered to prevent gas accumulation while maintaining atmospheric pressure designed to induce psychological discomfort. The lighting system represents the most sophisticated psychological weapon ever installed in a prison cell. 6,000 lumens calibrated to disrupt circadian rhythms, controlled by timers that randomize day-night cycles. The fluorescent fixtures are embedded in the ceiling behind bulletproof glass, casting shadows that seem to move even when nothing is moving. But the cell door represents the true masterpiece of containment engineering. 890 kilograms of hardened steel, heavier than most bank vault doors, yet engineered to open silently in 12 seconds. 4 guards required for operation, each responsible for a specific mechanical sequence that must be performed in precise order. The locking mechanism involves 17 separate deadbolts, each controlled by a different key held by a different supervisor. The final inspection reveals what will later be called a construction error, though nothing in this place happens by accident. The cell measures 30 centimeters shorter than architectural plans specify, 9 meters instead of 9.3. The compression effect creates a sensation of the walls closing in, even when standing perfectly still. Psychological warfare disguised as measurement discrepancy. Administrative records show this error wasn't discovered until final inspection, but construction photographs tell a different story. The shortened dimension appears in blueprints dated 3 months before completion, suggesting the modification was deliberate. Someone decided that mathematical perfection required one final cruelty, a cell that slowly crushes the spirit through spatial compression. As December snow falls on the valley, Unit 20 sits empty, waiting. $2.3 million of concrete and steel in psychological engineering, creating negative space in the shape of human suffering. The architects have succeeded beyond their wildest ambitions. They have built a cell that doesn't just contain the body, it actively erases the soul. November 5, 1995. Altiplano Federal Center officially opens with capacity for 1,200 inmates, but Solitary Unit 20 remains empty for 8 months. Breathing like a mechanical lung, its ventilation system cycling air through a space designed for one specific body that hasn't arrived yet. The staff training protocols reveal the institutional philosophy that will ultimately doom this entire enterprise. 89 guards undergo 6 months of psychological conditioning to work in maximum isolation units, learning to interact with prisoners as security objects rather than human beings. They practice referring to inmates by cell numbers instead of names. They rehearse conversations stripped of emotional content. They learn to see suffering as a security feature, not a moral failure. The training manuals read like instruction guides for systematic dehumanization. Guards must rotate every 3 hours to prevent relationship formation with prisoners. Eye contact beyond security necessity is discouraged. Personal information about inmates is classified above guard clearance levels. The goal is to create human robots programmed for mechanical cruelty. But human beings resist programming, even when that programming serves institutional efficiency. Guards begin developing their own informal protocols, small acts of rebellion disguised as policy compliance, looking away during cell inspections, delivering meals 30 seconds later than required, creating tiny windows of unpredictability that maintain sanity for both keeper and kept. The operating budget for empty Unit 20 tells its own story about institutional priorities. $2,100 per day to maintain a vacant cell, more than the average Mexican family earns in 4 months. Climate control cycling through an empty room. Surveillance equipment recording nothing but shadows and dust. Security protocols designed for the absence of security threats. Meanwhile, administrative offices buzz with intelligence reports confirming what everyone already knows. Joaquin Guzman has been located in Guatemala. The machinery of capture is already in motion. Unit 20 receives its first and only modification in July 1996. Installation of seismic sensors beneath the floor, calibrated to detect tunneling activity. The irony is lost on no one except the bureaucrats who authorized it. They've built the most secure prison cell in hemisphere history, then immediately begun modifying it to address its fundamental vulnerability. The walls designed to contain human ingenuity are being undermined before they've contained anything at all. June 9, 1993, 3:22 in the morning. El Chapo's capture in Guatemala triggers a mobilization that resembles a military invasion more than a prisoner transfer. Unmarked military aircraft. 47 vehicle convoy. 127 federal agents. Road closures affecting 50,000 civilians. Total security cost of $890,000 for an 8-hour journey. The logistics reveal Mexico's profound uncertainty about what they've actually captured. Intelligence reports describe a 5'6" man who weighs 73 kilograms, but the security protocol suggests they're transporting a nuclear device. Every bridge inspected, every tunnel searched, every overpass cleared of civilians. The convoy moves through darkness, headlights creating a river of light flowing toward the valley of broken men. Radio silence except for coded position reports. Snipers positioned at quarter-mile intervals along the route. Helicopters maintaining continuous aerial surveillance. All this firepower to move one man from one cage to another. At Altiplano, Unit 20 awakens from its 8-month slumber. Climate control systems activate. Surveillance equipment powers on. Guards assume positions they've rehearsed but never performed. The concrete coffin prepares to receive its intended occupant. The medical examination upon arrival documents what the next 8 years will do to human physiology. Weight, 73 kilograms. Blood pressure, normal. Psychological evaluation, alert and oriented. Within 8 years, these numbers will tell the story of institutional torture disguised as administrative procedure. He will leave Altiplano weighing 58 kilograms. A 20% body mass reduction attributed to institutional diet protocols. But El Chapo's first words to the warden, recorded by surveillance equipment designed to capture exactly this kind of intelligence, prove prophetic in ways no one imagines. How thick are the walls? The question hangs in the recycled air of Unit 20 like a mathematical equation waiting to be solved. The warden, consulting his briefing materials, responds with pride. 1.2 meters of reinforced concrete. Stronger than nuclear bunker specifications. El Chapo nods slowly, his eyes already mapping the geometry of his prison. And how deep is the foundation? The warden doesn't know the answer to this question, but he will learn it 18 months later when ground-penetrating radar reveals a tunnel 3 meters below the foundation level, carved from bedrock with precision that suggests architectural knowledge of the facility itself. As the cell door closes with its carefully engineered silence, the most expensive prison cell in hemisphere history begins its true function, not containing human ingenuity, but proving that human ingenuity cannot be contained. The machine is finally operational, and it has already begun to fail. Day 1 begins at 5:47 in the morning with the mechanical click of fluorescent lights. The timing is deliberate, not aligned with sunrise or circadian rhythm, but calculated to induce disorientation through random interruption of sleep cycles. El Chapo's eyes open to 6,000 lumens of white light flooding a 9-meter concrete box that costs $2,100 per day to maintain. The daily routine unfolds with the precision of institutional clockwork. 37 minutes of supervised exercise in a concrete yard measuring 4 by 6 meters, smaller than the average American bathroom. 14 minutes of shower time under constant surveillance, water temperature controlled to prevent comfort, duration, time to prevent relaxation. Meal specifications read like a laboratory protocol for human degradation. 1,847 calories daily, pre-chewed to prevent utensil provision, delivered through a slot that allows no human contact. The food arrives at irregular intervals, sometimes at noon, sometimes at 3 in the afternoon, creating temporal disorientation that compounds physical isolation. Within 6 weeks, the surveillance cameras document El Chapo's descent into sleep deprivation. He loses the ability to sleep more than 47 minutes consecutively, his circadian rhythms shattered by lighting systems designed to fragment time itself. The facility psychologist notes this rate of mental deterioration with alarm, but his concerns vanish into administrative files that no one reads. Month 3 brings the first sign of what surveillance teams will later classify as adaptive behavior. El Chapo begins speaking to the walls for 2.7 hours continuously, his voice a monotone murmur that seems to violate the acoustic dampening. Audio analysis reveals patterns in his speech, not madness, but code. Mathematical sequences disguised as prayer, architectural measurements embedded in what sounds like delusional rambling. The guards monitoring Unit 20 begin requesting transfers to other facilities. They report headaches, insomnia, depression, symptoms that mirror those exhibited by the man they're watching. The institution designed to break one mind is systematically breaking dozens, creating a contagion of psychological damage that spreads through the facility like architectural cancer. The surveillance center for Unit 20 occupies a windowless room 30 meters from the cell, connected by fiber optic cables that carry every pixel of human degradation in high definition. 18 technicians monitor 23 cameras around the clock, recording every breath, every movement, every sign of the human spirit slowly dissolving under engineered pressure. Guard rotation psychology operates on principles borrowed from military interrogation techniques. Shifts limited to 3.2 hours to prevent emotional attachment to the prisoner. Guards forbidden to speak El Chapo's name, referring only to Unit 20 subject in reports that reduce human existence to administrative data points. The dehumanization protocol extends beyond language into behavior modification. Guards must maintain visual contact through cameras rather than direct observation, creating psychological distance that transforms human interaction into surveillance theater. They watch El Chapo eat, sleep, pace, and deteriorate, but they observe him as technicians observe specimens, clinically, dispassionately, mechanically. Equipment costs tell their own story about institutional paranoia. $127,000 worth of surveillance technology replaced every 6 months due to technical failures that coincidentally always affect audio recording first. Cameras develop blind spots. Microphones experience selective deafness. Motion sensors malfunction during precisely timed intervals. Guard Roberto Mendez begins noticing these surveillance gaps during his 3rd month of duty. 4.7 minutes of system failure that occurs with mathematical precision, too regular to be random equipment malfunction, too sophisticated to be accidental. The blind spots appear during specific shifts, operated by specific personnel, suggesting coordination that violates every security protocol. Mendez documents these anomalies in reports that disappear into administrative channels, emerging weeks later with classifications that restrict access to supervisors who never respond. The surveillance system designed to provide total transparency becomes selectively opaque, developing institutional cataracts that allow forbidden activities to flourish in planned darkness. The watchers slowly realize they're being watched themselves, not by their supervisors, but by the prisoner they're supposed to be monitoring. El Chapo's seemingly random movements create patterns that map guard positions, rotation schedules, and surveillance coverage. He's conducting counterintelligence from inside a concrete box, turning the panopticon into a tool for studying his captors. Year 2 transforms Unit 20 from a security facility into an economic laboratory, studying the mathematical inevitability of institutional corruption. Guard salaries average $340 monthly, while bribes start at $12,000, a 35-to-1 ratio that makes moral choices into mathematical equations with predetermined solutions. The recruitment process operates with the precision of a military campaign. Family members photographed entering schools, shopping centers, churches. Financial records analyzed for pressure points, medical bills, mortgage payments, gambling debts. Psychological profiles constructed to identify guards susceptible to fear, greed, or simple human sympathy for suffering. Economic leverage creates corruption cascades that spread through the facility like financial contagion. One guard accepts money to look away during a specific 15-minute window. That compromise generates evidence for blackmail. Blackmail creates debt that can only be repaid through deeper involvement. Deeper involvement generates more evidence. The mathematics compound until extraction becomes impossible. Internal investigation reveals 23 of 89 guards have received unexplained financial deposits totaling $2.7 million over 18 months. Bank records document regular transfers from accounts linked to shell companies registered in Guatemala, El Salvador, and the Cayman Islands. The money trail leads to cartels, but the investigation terminates quietly after reaching too close to government offices in Mexico City. Warden Francisco Hernandez faces the institutional nightmare that consumes every administrator who attempts moral leadership in an amoral system. His own nephew appears on El Chapo's payroll. $12,000 monthly for information about administrative procedures, guard schedules, and facility vulnerabilities. Family loyalty conflicts with institutional duty, creating moral paralysis that enables systematic corruption. The choice becomes mathematically stark. Report the nephew and destroy his family's economic stability, or become complicit in the growing conspiracy that threatens everything he's built. Hernandez chooses family over institution, providing the final psychological victory that El Chapo needs. When the warden becomes corrupt, the entire system follows. The corruption algorithm proves that no security system can survive when moral incentives conflict with economic incentives. $2.3 million in bribes defeats $47.3 million in security infrastructure, demonstrating the mathematical impossibility of containing human nature through human institutions. Year 3 marks the first confirmed communication breach, a moment when $2.3 million of surveillance technology proves helpless against human ingenuity disguised as madness. El Chapo successfully passes a message to another prisoner using Morse code transmitted through deliberate footfall patterns on concrete, audible through ventilation systems despite acoustic dampening. The methodology reveals sophistication that transforms institutional containment into institutional embarrassment. Measured steps creating dots and dashes, heel strikes for emphasis, barefoot silence for spacing. The concrete floor becomes a telegraph key, and the ventilation system becomes a transmission network connecting isolation cells across the facility. Audio analysis of the transmitted message reveals El Chapo has somehow obtained detailed architectural plans of Altiplano, including structural information that even guards don't possess. Foundation depths, steel reinforcement patterns, electrical system layouts, ventilation duct dimensions, information that exists only in classified engineering documents stored in government offices. Security Review discovers the architectural plans could only have been accessed from 3 locations: the original construction firm's archives, the Ministry of Justice's classified records, or the facility administrator's private safe. 2 of these locations are in Mexico City, suggesting the corruption network extends far beyond Altiplano's walls into the heart of government infrastructure. The communication breakthrough transforms El Chapo's isolation from torture into strategic advantage. Messages begin flowing between cells with efficiency that surpasses official administrative channels. Information about guard schedules, facility routines, security vulnerabilities, and administrative procedures circulates through the prisoner network faster than through supervisory channels. Prison authorities face the paradox that will ultimately destroy their entire system: Stopping the communication requires acknowledging it exists, but acknowledging it exists requires admitting their $2 million security system has been systematically defeated by a barefoot man in a concrete box. The sound of silence breaking echoes through administrative offices, where officials realize their perfect cage has become a communication hub connecting Mexico's most dangerous criminals in a network more efficient than their own command structure. Years 4 and 5 document the emergence of an organizational structure that operates within Altiplano more efficiently than the official institutional hierarchy. Laundry workers, kitchen staff, maintenance crews, medical personnel, administrative clerks. 67 facility employees comprise an invisible army that transforms Mexico's most secure prison into a cartel operations center. Network economics operate on profit margins that make corruption irresistible. Monthly payroll of $47,000 distributed to facility employees, funded through drug profits that generate $2.3 million weekly. The mathematics create an economic ecosystem where crime pays better than law enforcement, where loyalty to cartels provides more security than loyalty to government. Communication efficiency analysis reveals the devastating truth about institutional failure. El Chapo's internal network delivers messages to Mexico City in 6 hours versus 3 days through proper administrative channels. Prisoner intelligence reaches cartel leadership faster than official security reports reach their intended recipients. The network operates with military precision disguised as institutional incompetence. Maintenance schedules coordinate with message deliveries. Kitchen rotations align with intelligence transfers. Medical appointments facilitate strategic meetings. Laundry operations provide cover for contraband distribution. Every legitimate institutional function becomes a vector for criminal activity. Federal investigators identify the network's organizational structure, but realize that dismantling it would require replacing 89% of facility staff, effectively shutting down Mexico's most secure prison. The corruption has become so comprehensive that the institution cannot survive without it. Altiplano needs its criminals to operate as a functional facility. The invisible army proves that institutional capture happens not through dramatic confrontation, but through patient subversion. El Chapo doesn't break out of prison. He gradually converts the prison into a cartel facility that happens to contain some government employees. Administrative records from this period reveal the final institutional surrender. Security protocols are modified to accommodate known corruption. Guard schedules work around suspected cartel activities. Surveillance systems develop convenient blind spots during specific operational windows. The government begins managing its own facilities to prevent interference with criminal operations. Year 6 brings the intelligence breakthrough that should have triggered immediate intervention, but instead reveals the depth of institutional paralysis. Federal surveillance intercepts communications, documenting active tunnel construction beneath Unit 20, an engineering project that requires mathematical precision, sophisticated equipment, and logistical coordination involving dozens of people. Engineering analysis of intercepted communications reveals specifications that dwarf the tunnel's legendary reputation. Excavation requires removing 3,250 cubic meters of earth, enough to fill 32 Olympic swimming pools. Installation of ventilation systems for 1.5 kilometers of underground passage. GPS navigation systems providing precision within 2-meter accuracy for tunnel emergence. Timeline calculations create the first mathematical impossibility that investigators cannot explain away. Based on soil density, excavation equipment, and workforce estimates, tunnel construction has been active for 14 months. This means excavation began while El Chapo remained under 24-hour surveillance in maximum security containment. Ground-penetrating radar confirms the tunnel measures 87% complete. But authorities face a devastating institutional paralysis. They cannot stop construction without revealing they've monitored it for months. They cannot arrest conspirators without exposing their surveillance networks. They cannot modify security protocols without acknowledging systematic failure. The administrative choice becomes politically impossible. Immediate intervention destroys careers and triggers investigations that implicate hundreds of government officials. Continued surveillance enables escape, but provides plausible deniability for institutional leaders. The government chooses career preservation over law enforcement, allowing tunnel completion rather than admitting systematic corruption. Labor analysis reveals the mathematical impossibilities that prove institutional complicity. Three-person crew allegedly moves 47 cubic meters daily, requiring superhuman effort and impossible logistics. The actual workforce necessarily includes dozens of professionals with mining experience, construction equipment, and institutional support for material delivery. Month by month, investigators document progress on a project they cannot stop without destroying themselves. The tunnel becomes a monument to institutional paralysis, an engineering achievement that proves government agencies can observe crimes without preventing them, monitor criminals without arresting them, and protect institutional reputations while abandoning institutional responsibilities. The blueprint discovery marks the moment when Mexican law enforcement learns they've been watching their own defeat in real time, recording evidence of failures they cannot acknowledge without admitting the entire system serves criminal rather than governmental interests. June 2015. The tunnel construction enters its final phase as outside crews work 24 hours daily to complete the last 127 meters. Surface operations disguised as legitimate construction create cover for the most sophisticated prison break in modern history. A modified motorcycle ferries excavated dirt in canvas bags, its engine noise timed to coincide with facility maintenance periods that happen with suspicious regularity. The makeshift ventilation system pushes fresh air through 1.5 kilometers of underground passage using equipment that costs more than most legitimate businesses earn annually. PVC pipes connected to battery-powered fans create atmospheric circulation that prevents carbon dioxide accumulation and maintains oxygen levels necessary for extended underground work. Construction noise masking reveals institutional coordination that extends beyond corruption into active collaboration. Heavy machinery operates on the surface during predetermined windows when facility maintenance creates acoustic cover. Jackhammers breaking concrete foundations coincide exactly with prison laundry operations that generate industrial noise levels. Labor analysis confronts mathematics that violate physical possibility. Three-person crew allegedly moves 47 cubic meters of earth daily, requiring each worker to excavate, transport, and dispose of 15 cubic meters per shift. The mathematical impossibility suggests a workforce exceeding 20 people operating with professional mining equipment and institutional logistical support. Surface surveillance documents equipment deliveries that dwarf the tunnel's supposed amateur construction. Modified power tools worth $500 cannot excavate volcanic soil at documented rates. The actual equipment inventory necessarily includes industrial boring machines, pneumatic excavation systems, and GPS-guided navigation technology worth approximately $2.7 million. July 1, 2015. Seismic sensors detect activity directly beneath Unit 20, vibrations consistent with mechanical excavation 3 meters below foundation level. The alert triggers automated notification systems designed to immediately inform facility command, but administrative processing delays the information for 11 days, creating a window of institutional blindness during the tunnel's final completion phase. The 11-day delay represents either catastrophic administrative incompetence or deliberate institutional sabotage. Security protocols mandate immediate lockdown procedures when seismic activity suggests tunneling beneath maximum security facilities. The delay allows tunnel completion while maintaining plausible deniability for administrators who claim they responded to information as soon as it became available. July 11, 2015. 8:52 p.m. El Chapo vanishes from Unit 20 during the 4.7-minute surveillance gap that guards have learned to expect with mathematical precision. The escape begins during a window of institutional blindness that has become as reliable as the facility's electrical systems. Escape timeline reconstruction reveals logistical coordination that transforms individual escape into military operation. 23 minutes from cell to tunnel entrance, hidden beneath the shower drain that has been secretly modified over 18 months. 47 minutes crawling through 1.5 kilometers of underground passage, equipped with LED lighting, compressed air ventilation, and communication systems. 12 minutes from tunnel exit to surface extraction point, where a modified motorcycle waits with GPS coordinates programmed for immediate evacuation. The vehicle represents the final proof of external coordination, positioned at precise emergence coordinates that require mathematical calculation of underground trajectory and surface landmarks. Surveillance analysis reveals guard behavior that suggests either systematic incompetence or active collaboration. Normal patrol patterns continue for 37 minutes after escape initiation, indicating guards maintain institutional routines while prisoner disappears through infrastructure they supposedly monitor continuously. 9:29 p.m. Prison alarm systems activate. Radio intercepts document cartel communications confirming package delivered 18 minutes earlier. External surveillance networks track El Chapo's extraction with precision that exceeds institutional response times, suggesting criminal organizations possess superior intelligence gathering than government security systems. The 41-minute delay between escape initiation and alarm activation provides sufficient time for complete evacuation, route clearance, and evidence disposal. By the time Altiplano acknowledges the escape, El Chapo travels beyond immediate pursuit radius with logistical support that includes vehicle staging, route planning, and safe house coordination. Real-time communication intercepts reveal operational command structure functioning with efficiency that embarrasses government response protocols. Cartel networks coordinate escape logistics, pursuit evasion, and media management, while federal agencies struggle to confirm whether escape has actually occurred. First official descent into the 1.5-kilometer tunnel reveals engineering sophistication that defies every assumption about amateur construction coordinated by corrupted prison guards. The passage represents professional mining operation disguised as criminal improvisation, featuring technical specifications that exceed many legitimate infrastructure projects. LED lighting systems provide continuous illumination throughout the tunnel's entire length, powered by electrical infrastructure that requires professional installation and ongoing maintenance. The lighting operates on motion sensors that activate as investigators progress through the passage, revealing pre-programmed efficiency that suggests months of testing and calibration. Compressed air ventilation maintains atmospheric pressure and oxygen levels necessary for extended underground activity. The ventilation system operates through PVC pipe networks connected to battery-powered circulation fans positioned every 50 meters throughout the passage length. Air quality analysis reveals carbon dioxide levels maintained below safety thresholds despite tunnel depth and length. Reinforced walls rated for vehicular traffic indicate construction intended for repeated use rather than single escape operation. Steel mesh reinforcement every 2 meters provides structural integrity that prevents tunnel collapse during seismic activity or surface construction. The reinforcement suggests permanent installation rather than temporary excavation. GPS-guided precision emerges within 2-meter accuracy over 1.5-kilometer underground distance, requiring navigation technology that costs approximately $500,000 and operates with satellite coordination impossible without professional surveying equipment and institutional geodetic data. Construction cost analysis totals $2.7 million in materials, equipment, and labor, exceeding the budget for many legitimate government construction projects. The economic investment suggests tunnel construction represents long-term strategic infrastructure rather than desperate escape attempt. Forensic analysis of excavated soil reveals traces of specialized drilling lubricant used exclusively by professional mining operations. The lubricant costs $1,200 per gallon and requires industrial suppliers with government contracts. Equipment inventory analysis identifies machinery worth approximately $500,000 that disappeared from government warehouse facilities during tunnel construction period, July 12th through 20th, 2015. The corruption network collapses under investigation pressure as Altiplano transforms from maximum security facility into crime scene documenting systematic institutional failure. Mass arrests of facility staff reveal the scope of criminal infiltration that extends throughout every operational level. Casualty count documents human cost of institutional corruption. 67 employees arrested on charges ranging from bribery to conspiracy. 23 fired without criminal prosecution due to insufficient evidence or prosecutorial discretion. 12 individuals disappeared before questioning, suggesting intimidation or elimination by criminal organizations protecting operational security. 3 apparent suicides within 48 hours indicate psychological pressure that exceeds human endurance. Facility employees face choice between criminal prosecution, cartel retribution, or institutional abandonment. Suicide becomes the only option that provides escape from impossible circumstances created by systematic corruption. Financial forensics reveal $47 million in cartel payments distributed to government employees over 8 years of operation. The payment total exceeds Altiplano's original construction budget, demonstrating that criminal organizations invested more money in corrupting the facility than the government spent building it. Investigation scope expands beyond Altiplano, as corruption network analysis reveals connections throughout Mexican law enforcement hierarchy. 27 federal prosecutors received payments ranging from $50,000 to $500,000 for case modifications, evidence suppression, and sentencing recommendations favorable to cartel interests. 12 judges accepted financial considerations totaling $8.7 million for rulings that enabled cartel operations, reduced sentences, or dismissed charges against high-value criminal defendants. Judicial corruption extends through appellate courts, creating systemic legal protection for criminal enterprises. 89 police commanders participated in cartel payroll systems that provided operational intelligence, advance warning of enforcement operations, and protection for criminal logistics networks. Police corruption transforms law enforcement agencies into criminal support infrastructure serving cartel rather than governmental interests. The 6-month international manhunt mobilizes 18,000 federal agents across 23 countries, costing $127 million while achieving a statistical success rate that approaches mathematical impossibility. Every enforcement action generates activity without results, creating operational theater that substitutes motion for effectiveness. Search methodology employs every available law enforcement technology. Satellite surveillance systems monitoring 60,000 square kilometers of suspected territory, financial tracking analyzing 47 million transaction records, communication intercepts processing 12,000 hours of recorded conversations, and family surveillance involving 247 potential associates. 23,000 raids conducted across Mexico and Central America yield 890 arrests without capturing El Chapo or significant organizational leadership. The 0.004% success rate demonstrates that massive resource deployment cannot overcome fundamental intelligence failures and systematic corruption. Operational analysis reveals that law enforcement agencies possess inferior intelligence compared to criminal organizations they supposedly pursue. Cartel networks anticipate enforcement operations, evacuate targeted locations, and coordinate protective measures, while government agencies conduct raids on empty buildings and abandoned safe houses. Resource allocation analysis documents institutional priorities that favor dramatic visibility over investigative effectiveness. Press conferences announcing enforcement successes occur daily, while actual enforcement operations discover evidence of prior criminal presence without active criminal activity. International cooperation provides political theater disguised as law enforcement coordination. Information sharing between governmental agencies proves slower and less reliable than intelligence networks operated by criminal organizations. Cartels coordinate international operations more efficiently than government agencies coordinate international enforcement. January 8, 2016, 4:23 a.m. Mexican Marines finally locate El Chapo in Los Mochis after receiving intelligence from sources that remain classified in official reports. The arrest location reveals he's been hiding in tunnel systems even more sophisticated than his escape route, suggesting continued access to professional engineering resources and institutional protection. January 9, 2016. El Chapo's return to Altiplano initiates the most expensive security modification in prison history, as administrators attempt to demonstrate institutional learning while avoiding acknowledgement of systematic failure. $12 million in additional security measures transform Unit 20 into a technological fortress that costs more to secure than most government facilities cost to construct. Enhanced protocols multiply surveillance systems beyond rational necessity. 47 new cameras provide coverage redundancy that approaches mathematical absurdity, multiple devices monitoring the same concrete surfaces from slightly different angles. Seismic monitoring operates every 30 seconds, generating data streams that overwhelm analytical capacity while providing false confidence in technological solutions. Guard rotation modifications reduce shift length to 90 minutes, creating staffing requirements that necessitate hiring additional personnel without adequate background investigation. The shortened rotations prevent guard-prisoner relationship development while creating administrative chaos that facilitates new corruption opportunities. Complete staff replacement eliminates institutional knowledge while introducing personnel without established loyalty to either government or criminal organizations. New employees represent unknown quantities who may prove more susceptible to corruption than previous staff who at least possessed known vulnerabilities and established relationships. Psychological evaluation upon return documents the paradoxical effects of successful escape on prisoner mental health. El Chapo gains 12 kilograms and exhibits improved psychological stability compared to his condition before escape. The 18 months of freedom restore cognitive function and emotional equilibrium that years of isolation systematically destroyed. May 7, 2016. Intelligence services discover evidence of new tunnel construction beneath Altiplano's modified security systems. Construction equipment detected through enhanced seismic monitoring indicates excavation activity that began within 90 days of El Chapo's return. The discovery triggers immediate transfer to Ciudad Juarez facility, as administrators acknowledge that Altiplano cannot contain El Chapo regardless of security modifications. The transfer represents institutional surrender disguised as administrative procedure. Mexico's most expensive prison facility admits defeat by removing its most notorious prisoner rather than addressing systematic vulnerabilities that enable criminal operations. Unit 20 sits vacant for 18 months as Mexican authorities debate whether their most expensive prison cell represents maximum security achievement or maximum liability admission. The empty concrete box costs $2,847 daily to maintain, climate control cycling through vacant space, surveillance systems recording emptiness, security protocols protecting nothing from nobody. Facility operations continue at 67% capacity due to staff shortages and institutional trust deficits that make recruitment impossible. Qualified candidates refuse employment at institutions associated with systematic corruption and professional destruction. Personnel standards decline as administrators prioritize warm bodies over competent staff, recreating conditions that enabled original corruption networks. Structural analysis reveals that tunnel construction compromised Altiplano's foundation integrity in ways that threaten long-term operational viability. The building sinks 2.3 centimeters annually as underground excavation destabilizes geological foundations designed to support maximum security infrastructure. Engineering reports recommend complete reconstruction, but budget authorization remains indefinitely postponed. November 2017 brings classified planning documents proposing secret demolition of Unit 20 to eliminate physical evidence of institutional failure. Construction crews refuse preliminary assessment contracts after 3 accidents during initial site surveys. Equipment malfunctions, structural collapses, and inexplicable technical failures suggest that even demolition presents risks that contractors cannot quantify or insure. The empty fortress becomes a monument to institutional paralysis. Too expensive to maintain, too dangerous to demolish, too politically sensitive to acknowledge. Unit 20 exists in administrative limbo that perfectly represents Mexico's relationship with systematic corruption. Impossible to ignore, impossible to address, impossible to resolve. Congressional investigation examines how $47.3 million in security infrastructure proved helpless against $2.7 million in tunnel construction, revealing mathematical relationships that demonstrate the economic inevitability of institutional corruption when criminal profits exceed government budgets. Testimony documents systematic failures that extend beyond individual incompetence into structural impossibilities created by economic relationships that make corruption mathematically inevitable. Seismic alerts ignored for 11 days. Surveillance footage deleted before analysis. Maintenance records falsified to create operational cover. Guard reports modified to conceal suspicious activities. Mathematical analysis concludes that perfect security becomes impossible when human beings operate systems designed to contain human ingenuity. Corruption probability approaches statistical certainty when criminal incentives exceed legitimate salaries by ratios of 35-1 or greater. Moral choice becomes economic impossibility under compensation structures that reward cooperation with criminal organizations. Investigation scope expands to document systematic corruption extending throughout Mexican government hierarchy. El Chapo's network includes 12 active federal judges whose rulings enabled cartel operations over 8 years. 3 cabinet-level officials received regular payments totaling $4.7 million for policy decisions favorable to criminal enterprises. Final congressional report contains findings so politically devastating that classification becomes indefinite to prevent governmental collapse. Publication would implicate sitting officials, retired leaders, and institutional structures throughout Mexican democracy. The investigation concludes that El Chapo's escape represents symptom rather than cause of systematic governmental failure. 2018-2019. Altiplano operates with Unit 20 permanently sealed, but facility staff report phenomena that transform security concerns into supernatural anxieties that prove more disruptive than actual criminal activity. Temperature fluctuations in corridors adjacent to the abandoned cell block. Electrical malfunctions affecting only systems connected to Unit 20 infrastructure. Surveillance equipment failures isolated to the sealed section. Scientific analysis attributes anomalous activity to structural instability caused by tunnel excavation that compromised building foundations and electrical systems. Ground settling creates pressure on utility connections that generates random equipment failures and environmental control problems. Physics provides rational explanations that staff refuse to accept because supernatural attribution feels safer than acknowledging ongoing institutional vulnerability. Personnel psychology reveals that guards develop greater anxiety about paranormal activity than they previously experienced about actual criminal threats. Fear of unexplained phenomena proves more psychologically disruptive than fear of violent prisoners, suggesting that uncertainty creates more stress than known dangers. Facility psychologist documents post-traumatic stress symptoms in 23% of remaining staff related to the El Chapo period of institutional operation. Symptoms include insomnia, hypervigilance, depression, and anxiety triggered by administrative procedures that remind employees of systematic corruption that destroyed colleagues' careers and lives. Unit 20's abandoned presence haunts Altiplano more effectively than El Chapo's physical presence ever did, proving that institutional failure creates permanent psychological damage that survives long after individual criminals transfer to other facilities. January 19, 2017. El Chapo's extradition to the United States represents Mexico's final admission of institutional defeat disguised as international legal cooperation. The transfer removes Mexico's obligation to contain a prisoner they cannot secure while providing political cover for systematic failure through diplomatic procedure. Transfer logistics mobilize 47-vehicle convoy, military aircraft, and diplomatic negotiations involving 4 countries for total security costs exceeding $3.2 million over 8 hours. The expense demonstrates that moving El Chapo costs more than most government programs spend annually, revealing economic absurdity of individual prisoner management versus institutional reform. Mexican authorities acknowledge that containing El Chapo domestically costs more than entire annual budgets of 12 state prison systems combined. Economic analysis proves that individual prisoner management expenses exceed systematic institutional improvement costs, suggesting that political priorities favor dramatic responses over effective solutions. Upon arrival in New York, El Chapo receives placement in a cell measuring 3 by 2 meters, smaller than Altiplano's Unit 20, but operated by personnel who earn living wages rather than poverty-level salaries that necessitate criminal supplementation. American guards resist corruption because economic incentives align with institutional responsibilities rather than criminal opportunities. El Chapo never attempts escape from American custody because institutional integrity creates security effectiveness that technological systems cannot provide. Personnel loyalty, purchased through fair compensation, proves more reliable than surveillance systems operated by corrupted staff who disable security measures for criminal profit. COVID-19 pandemic provides political cover for Altiplano's quiet downsizing, as Unit 20 section receives permanent closure without acknowledging systematic failure that necessitates facility modification. Public health concerns mask institutional health problems that preceded and exceed pandemic-related operational challenges. Demolition assessment requires $4.7 million for safe structural removal while preserving remaining facility operations. But budget authorization remains denied indefinitely due to competing priorities and political sensitivity surrounding acknowledgement of institutional failure. Environmental studies reveal tunnel contamination affecting groundwater in 2.3 square kilometer radius surrounding Altiplano. Chemical residue from construction operations continues poisoning local water supplies, creating public health consequences that exceed facility boundaries and affect civilian populations who received no benefit from prison operations. Property value analysis documents 67% decline in residential real estate within 5 kilometers of Altiplano as the facility becomes synonymous with institutional failure rather than community security. Local economic impact proves negative as security infrastructure reduces rather than enhances community prosperity and safety. Final accounting of the El Chapo experiment reveals total costs of $67.3 million spent to contain one individual for 8 years before inevitable escape that could have been predicted through basic economic analysis of institutional incentive structures. Human cost audit documents 89 careers destroyed through criminal prosecution, administrative termination, or reputational damage. 23 deaths connected to investigation, corruption, or institutional pressure. 247 families relocated under witness protection due to threats from criminal organizations or government agencies. Systematic damage to democratic faith and institutional integrity that affects millions of Mexican citizens. Per-day containment cost calculation reveals $23,067 daily expense for individual prisoner management, enough funding to operate rehabilitation programs for 1,200 nonviolent offenders annually. Opportunity cost analysis demonstrates that vindictive individual punishment prevents systematic crime reduction that would protect thousands of potential victims. Economic comparison shows that El Chapo's containment cost exceeded annual operating budgets of 43 municipal police departments, 17 community health centers, or 8 public school districts serving populations greater than 100,000 people each. Resource allocation prioritized individual prisoner punishment over community safety and institutional effectiveness. The moral mathematics conclude that absolute security requires absolute integrity. But absolute integrity cannot coexist with economic inequality that makes criminal collaboration more profitable than governmental service. Mexico learned that perfect cages cannot contain imperfect institutions. Technological solutions fail when applied to moral problems, and human dignity cannot be engineered away through concrete and steel. Unit 20 remains sealed but not demolished, serving as unintentional monument to fundamental truth that absolute power corrupts absolutely, even when applied to absolute security. The empty cell costs nothing to maintain but everything to remember, standing as $2 million proof that no cage is stronger than the moral character of those who hold the keys. The fortress built to contain one man's body became a laboratory that measured one nation's soul and found it wanting.